This is how to customize your workflow in TrackerRMS. Out of the box, your workflow has been configured for you, but if there is any need to add, remove, or change any of the steps, this is how you can do so. Click on the Tools button, and on the left-hand side, you'll have your application settings. So we'll look at the candidate settings in here, and this is where you can change the candidate statuses. So if there's any additional statuses for your candidates on the system, you can add these in and either choose to have them active or inactive. You can also go in and change the placement record statuses, and this is going to determine the candidate's workflow inside of a job. So the out-of-the-box workflow is going to cover a candidate being shortlisted, being sent, going through a first, second, or further interview, an offer being extended. They can be rejected by either the client themselves or you. They're put on assignment, that assignment is completed, or they're placed perm. So with this, you also have the ability to update the job status. So when you send a candidate's resume, it will update the job to resume sent to client. You also have the ability to impact a particular status of a candidate. For instance, if I wanted to change it so when somebody is placed perm, that their status went to inactive, I could do that from right here. You can also choose to apply the rule anytime. So let's look at the place perm one here. And we can update this so that when a candidate is set to place perm inside of a job, we also have their status go to inactive, so they wouldn't show up in your searches anymore. We can also choose to apply this rule anytime, never, or only the first time that you make that placement. They're all set to anytime for you right now. Lifecycle relegation allows you to either allow the job to move backwards. So for instance, once it's been placed perm, it can move backwards. If somebody is put in a first interview or an additional update happens, it would move from placed backwards. If you change that to freeze once status is reached, once you've got this far in the workflow, it would never move backwards. So here, if we wanted to change that, if we hit save and close, you would see that now we have set our candidate status. We've also set the relegation to freeze, and you can change any of these. The special rules are going to be workflow driven. So when you have a placement, you'd want it to update to working. If a rejection occurs, you'd want it set to rejection. An interview would need to be set to interview, and then CV would be for the initial CV sent. But let's say you wanted to change or add a particular stage into your workflow. This is where we could add a new item. You would want to change where you want it in process. So let's say we wanted to add a particular status in here. You could change the number of where it would go. You could also have any of the potentials set here. So one, let's say that we wanted to also have another rejection status. We could say, rejected offer. You could add this in. You could pick the order that it would go. So if we wanted this to be number 11 or number 10 here, the one thing that will happen if we add a new status in, we could say, no, we don't want it to set the job status. We don't want it to set the candidate. We're going to apply this anytime it happened. When I hit OK, it will drop that into the order that you have. If you have two numbers with the same, you'll notice that they will just list out alphabetically, but it's always a best practice to go and reorder those. So I can change our on assignment down to number 11. I can change completed assignment down to number 12, and then I could change place perm down to number 13. So that's how we can add a new stage into your workflow if you wanted. You can also delete any of these if they don't apply. For instance, if you don't do any contract work, you could go in and delete the record if on assignment or completed assignment doesn't apply to you guys. The next one we'll take a look at is the job statuses, which also go hand in hand here. So if we go into Tools and look at Job Settings, in Job Settings, this is where you have your job statuses. And this will take you through the life cycle of a job, which goes from open, resume sent to client, first interview, second interview, further interview, and offer being extended, and then a placement or a fill happening and that job being closed. So the probability is just going to assign a rough percentage to each level of that job. The state determines whether it is open in the system, whether it is won, which would mean it's placed or won, or whether it's a closed object or job. Force value would make you enter in a value for that job at any stage. So if we wanted to change, you can open it up and we can change the order, the probability of that. We can also change the state or that force value. But let's say we wanted to add in an option here and we want to call it loss to competitor. We can add that in and place it at number 9 if we wanted to go at the very end. Our probability would be 0%. We want this to be a closed job. We also don't care about values because it's lost. So if I hit OK, it's going to add that in to number 9. Now the only thing you'll want to be careful here is if you're changing any of these, it can impact the candidate statuses. So one thing we'll take a look at is, let's say we change resume sent to client, and we want to call this a submittal. You want to be careful here because if we save it and change this, now we've changed order number 2 to submittal, which is fine. But you're going to want to go back and make sure, one, we're going to hit save to keep those changes. But you'll want to double check under tools and candidate settings that we didn't unhook any of the workflow within the placement records. So here, since we renamed it, it's still there and it's fine. But the workflow is set, so when you have a resume sent, it will update that job to submittal. What you want to be careful is if you change the order of that, it would change where this is hooked in. So let's go back and show that quickly. So if we go into job settings and we go back into our statuses here, and let's say we want to add in a stage between open and submittal, and we're going to call this an internal submit. If I move this to number 2, and I go in and say it's open, we want the probability to be 10%. We don't want a value to be forced. I can add that into number 2. You'll see that these just need to be reordered. So I'm going to go ahead and change submittal down to number 3. And I'll have to reorder these to make sure that everything flows in the workflow. So I'm going to change our first interview down to number 4. I'm going to change our second interview down to number 5, so on and so forth, to make sure that we have everything reordered in the exact way that we want it for the workflow. So now that we have all of this reordered, our job workflow is set exactly as we want it, where now we have an internal submittal stage, which is going to be number 2, and then submittal becomes number 3. So here's an example of how we've now just unhooked our placement statuses. If we go into tools and go back into our candidate settings, now since we've changed those around, we'll see that it can point to different items. So if we refresh this here, we've now taken our resume sent and we've added in some extra stages. So you want to be careful and make sure that it's still pointing to our first interview. So we still have the order in here, which is good. So in this case, it has hung on to them. But you want to make sure that you don't clear out or lose any of these if you're moving the order around. So you can just double check to make sure that they're all still pointed to the right ones, and that your reordering didn't change any of these within the placement record statuses. Now the last piece of workflow we'll quickly look at is going to be configuring leads. So if we go into our lead setting here, this is where you can also change the lead statuses. So leads in Tracker go from open to qualified, disqualified, dead, and then converted. If we wanted to change this where, let's say, we didn't want the dead status in here, I can delete that out. I could also take any of these if I wanted to change converted into something else, or even if I wanted open to be called new. I could change that just by simply going new, hit save and close, and these can be reordered again using the numerical values. So that covers off basics around how to customize your workflow in Tracker.